So this shot looks extremely simple, but it was like a nightmare to figure out because this right here is about the size of half a grain of rice.
These ones. This is a dried cochineal.
So in the middle of the shot, this kind of crusty, raisinish looking thing is a dried parasitic insect. It's held in the very, very tips of a pair of forceps or tweezers, and it's set on a blue background. This was in a video where we talked about how these parasitic insects are used as like a red dye in a lot of foods and candies that you guys might be familiar with. And we had to hold it in the tips of these tweezers. What's difficult about macro shots like this too is you have to be very, very still. In general, when you have simple shots where there are not a lot of things, there's just a background and an object, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. You can't cover up any mistakes with cuts or different things in the background. So you have to kind of, I try my best to make sure things are very precise and framed very specifically. So to kind of get rid of the shakiness issue, what we have here is we have a set of forceps that extend kind of out of frame in this direction. The forceps themselves, I'm not physically holding them. They're held with like a clamp that is then itself kind of clamped to a table that nothing's touching the table, so it can't be shaky. The thing about very, very still things though, I think, is that they can look like an image, like a JPEG or something like that. So to make it feel more real, I'll often then kind of hold the tweezers with my hand, but try to rest my hand on a table. And it's almost like as you're breathing and as you're touching it, it gives it a little bit of natural movement to make it feel like the real thing rather than just like a photo. But the fact that your hand is supported by the table, it still makes it still enough. The thing that really makes this whole shot, I think, is this background gradient though. Just by kind of lighting this background differently, it can make it pop or it can make it fade away, and it can make it look totally different. I kind of try to make it so it's kind of dark on top usually, and then light on the bottom. To me, that gives it a lot of depth, I think. It makes it look very nice, and it gives it maybe kind of like a lot of contrast and color that you wouldn't get otherwise to really make it kind of pop out. And also kind of is the exact opposite of the lighting that you see on the object itself, where here it's light on top and dark on the bottom. So you get that nice contrast. So the way that I do this, how to get the lighting different on the subject versus the background, is we have kind of a light on top here that is just hitting our paper backdrop. The way that this is kind of oriented, I'm going to draw kind of like down here and show you. So I have a paper backdrop that is kind of like this. So say we're shooting this way, right? We're on sticks here. This is the paper backdrop, and then this is the tiny little bug that we're shooting. I have a light that is hitting just the backdrop, and there are a pair of barn doors on it, which are kind of like those flaps that can block out lights or block out kind of like portions of the light. So there's one barn door that's kind of flapped out here to create that kind of dark on top light that we see right here on the backdrop. And then there's another barn door right here that is blocking it from hitting the object itself. And we have kind of like the same thing happening for lighting on the object too, where we have some lights that are just hitting the object. People often wonder like what sort of lenses I use or what sort of cameras. The lens I use it's this brand that's called I don't know. I have no idea what kind of lens I use. It's just a macro lens that worked for my camera that had really good reviews. I shoot mostly on a GH4 that I got like 10 years ago. I only upgraded more recently, but kind of like early on when I started shooting, I was excited by the idea of getting kind of like the newest equipment because, I thought that if I had the newest stuff that it would make a better shot and I would become this like incredible filmmaker, you know? But I kind of took a deep breath and realized that I wasn't really getting as much quality as I could out of the equipment that I already had. So I just tried to kind of do what I could with the stuff that I had on hand. Instead of getting better cameras, I found it was more useful for me to just get better at shooting with the camera that I had. I've been using the same shots for the last 3 years. Then we got the big light in the background that's making this kind of bloom. Sometimes if you just boil it down and make it very simple, it can be very, very effective. That's a secret. Don't tell anybody.